Welcome, everybody, to our Morgan City Council work meeting. I believe it's July 9th, 2024.
We missed you.
I don't see anybody, but welcome if anybody's online. So for our work meeting, Jake, looks like you're up first with a general plan
Great.
prioritization.
Okay. Denise, can you send me, do you want to just pull it up or you can send me a Zoom? You want to just pull it up? It's pretty simple. Okay. All right. So in May, let me turn on my mic. Good evening, council, mayor. Great to be with you tonight. In May, we had a work session with the planning commission. And it was kind of just a discussion about the general plan is done. Morgan City has spent a couple years and a lot of effort on it. So what do we do to make the general plan work? How do we get it into action? What are our priorities? So we had a discussion with the planning commission and this is what we came up with. So we're presenting this to the city council and the mayor to see what you think. And then we'll go from there. We go to the next slide, please. So scroll down just a little bit more. I'm going to start with what's already in the works on the bottom. So the downtown master plan is in the works. That's a project that's ongoing. We just finished that survey. We've compiled that data. I have a presentation that I can bring back and share on what the public said. Also, as part of that project is the downtown ordinance that'll be coming with it as part of that. And then also the parks and trails master plan. That's part of that same project. And then the master plan community ordinance as well. So all that is bundled and in the works. You don't need to do anything about that. That's happening. It's that progress. I'm going to give you a date right now. August 28th. We have a public workshop planned. It'll probably be at the middle school. So that is going to be Wednesday, August 28th, most likely at 6 p.m. And we will have 3 different scenarios for the downtown and parks and rec and trails. And it'll be open for the public to come, give feedback on these 3 different scenarios. So we'll be advertising for that soon. In terms of the general plan implementation list, the subdivision update, that one I put a number 1 by it because per state code, that has to be updated by the end of the year. The 2023 legislation session didn't include communities of 5,000 or less residents. However, the 2024 legislation session did and required that all communities update their subdivision to match the state requirements. And that's something that we're working with the Planning Commission. And they will, in August, they will see an ordinance of that. And then probably in September, we'll have a public hearing. And then you'll get it in October. We could bump it up another month earlier if you think that's okay, but between October and November and you having 2 meetings a month, I think it should be fine. And the public hearing will happen at the Planning Commission. So you won't need to do the public hearing. Any questions on the subdivision ordinance? That's kind of the big one. It's going to change things to where the Planning Commission has the authority to approve subdivisions. They no longer go to city council, and that's a statewide change.
Who's invited to the workshop?
Oh, the downtown one, everyone.
Then how do you get that word out so that people know there?
It'll go out in, we'll send a flyer out with the utility bills. We've been doing that. We'll advertise on the city's website, also on your electronic sign out front, and whatever else methods you suggest. As part of our survey, we did ask people if they want to participate in the process, and if they gave us an email, we can send them a reminder. And we'll also share our flyer with all of you, and you can send that out. And we purposely timed it so it's after school's in session and not during the summer.
I don't know how widespread the newspaper is, but that's an option.
Okay,
Just to-
be happy to do that.
Yeah, news, a little
Um,
news alert.
Okay, when does the newspaper go out?
It's every Friday.
Every Friday?
Have it for the weekend.
Is it digital and paper or,
Yes.
okay, okay, great. Well, I think we should do that as well. Okay,
If you want to put in the newspaper, they have to have it by Tuesday.
okay. Of that week, okay, great. And do you have contact for them? Okay, let's connect on that. Okay, and then, so after the subdivision, some of these other ones aren't necessarily in a particular order. Maybe you can comment what you'd like to see. So the subdivision is the top because of the state legislation requirements. After that is like a zoning designation, kind of a quick guide. What we want is a complementary document to the general plan that basically is, in the general plan, we have the future land uses, and then we have the zoning, and this quick guide will help people understand, kind of interpret what does the general plan say on that future land use. That's something at least the planning commission wanted. The land use classification table needs an update. That's basically going, in each zone, it says you can do all these different things or you can't do these things. Just a review of that. There's not a particular item that we're looking at, but just reviewing that. Maybe there's some items we can combine. There might be some uses with technology that we might want to add or subtract. Also, the other one, transportation master plan. In the past, we had discussion with UDOT. They were going to help the city with a grant for a transportation master plan. They've had some personnel changes, so we're talking with them again. With Ryan, can't remember his last name, but he took Chris's spot, Chris Chestnut's spot. Yes, Ryan Porter, and so we're requesting funding from UDOT for that. And in particular, the transportation master plan will look at citywide corridors, a little bit more detailed than the general plan, but also particularly we want them to look at the interchange, what's going on there. Your interchange is kind of dangerous in terms of the, right on State Street, the corners, and that's where all the accidents happen is there. So having them look at that, and then also, I say the word schematic study, a second one. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but let's at least start talking about it a little bit more and look at if there was going to be a second Morgan exit, where would it be? And what kind of time frame would that come in? And then again, that's more just looking at it. UDOT's the one that makes that decision, but we at least want it on their radar. And so that way you don't, property doesn't get sold off and developed where you wanted it. And then the landscape ordinance, updating that. That's something we've identified needs particular attention in the manufacturing zone and also the commercial zone. Are there other things that's on your radar related to planning and the general plan that you would like myself and the planning commission, Teresa, to be working on? And planning commission works on it, sends it up to the pipeline for you to review and adjust and approve or disapprove.
Sounds to me like we need to fast track the subdivision
Yes.
part of it. Yeah, subdivision component. Focus on that right now.
Anything else? Well, that's, do you want to go to the next slide? I don't think. Okay, this one isn't, these were just topics that was discussed in the planning commission. You know, they want to look at land use, water, transportation. Align with the county regarding economic development practices. Add some more mixed use development, particularly downtown area. Pedestrian safety and friendliness, they're talking about State Street being safer. Also, they've brought up looking at the historic overlay area. That'll be combined with the downtown plan. And then, one comment, keep missed opportunities on mind. I can't remember what, speaking of on mind, I'm not exactly sure what those missed opportunities were. But I think they're saying if there's something, you know, that Morgan should be pursuing or chasing, then keep those going. And then they also do like an annual report in March or April on the general plan, where we just say, what have we done the last year to work on our general plan? Because I mean, that's the big picture vision for Morgan. So what have we done to progress on it? Just kind of a report update. And also kind of a let's readdress and say, okay, where do we want to go next? So it's a time to look at the last year and then look at what's coming next. And the reason for March and April, because also that's when legislation comes out. And so sometimes there may be things that are not on our radar, but state legislation says, hey, you got to be doing this. And so that's a good time to put it on the radar.
So Jake, just on radar, maybe it was part of the first slide, but general plan zoning can be different than current zoning. Is that important to be aligned, and how does that process take place?
Yeah, so the general plan has the future land use, which is a little bit different than zoning. I think that's what you meant. And so it's
yeah.
kind of, that's a little bit higher up in the planning perspective. And then zoning is more implementation on the ground. And sometimes the city can proactively say, we want to take these areas and change them to match the future land use. Or you can wait until the market catches up. Maybe there's not a demand in certain areas. And so you can let the market push it. There may be things in the commercial street downtown area, you say, let's get our zoning up to date. And so we work on those. And there may be some areas on the perimeter of the city that you're saying, let's just wait and see what the market comes back and responds, because it is a 20-year vision. And so some things may be right away, and some things you may say, okay, 5 or 10 years, now it's time to do that. Or you may let the market respond with that demand.
Anything in your mind that jumps out as being urgent?
I think State Street, you know, if we could get in some pedestrian crossings, safer. I think some more housing in the downtown area would be really good. There's a demand for that. And then certainly more trails. Oregon has a huge demand for trails, and you just don't have many. And for, you know, we don't have to go back and look at the history of the valley, but there's just not public land in Morgan like other places. And so you kind of have to be more creative to try to come up with the trails and all that. And I say that because I go to the mountain bike races because my daughters race on the mountain bike team, and we're in the same region as Morgan. I love it. And I see a lot of people from town there. And Morgan competes with Skyline High School in Salt Lake City, you know, a giant school with a lot of resources, and Morgan is right there with them. And so I just know that there's that demand for trails, and I've heard it from the public. And so anyway, those are my own thoughts.
Thank you.
On the traffic study, would that include the pedestrian safety and friendliness?
Yes. As part of the downtown plan, we are making some recommendations and involving UDOT, but I think that'll take it to another level. And for UDOT to actually allow, you know, that implementation, they're gonna wanna kind of do their own study, and maybe that could be part of it. I just think there's a couple spots getting some of those pedestrian lights would be a really good thing.
Like 100 years to build over the road.
Oh, like a pedestrian bridge? Well, it shouldn't take that long, but it does take a couple $1 million. You do have the one up, to the northwest, kind of by where you're at, that goes underneath by where we had the annexation, so there's that opportunity. But it is, it is scary down by where the new sign is gonna be. I spent some time walking around there, and as a pedestrian, you feel like it's a pretty risky area. And so I imagine that whole north to south crossing, if you're not in a vehicle, it feels dangerous.
Yeah, I had a grandson get hit by.
Uh, This car didn't see him, and yeah, is he okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
$10.
You should ask for a lot more than that.
I just have a lot of people voicing that concern. They come out like the condos behind Tractor Supply and Cross. Most of them tend to want to cross down by Tractor Supply because you have a view. But if you get up on the bridge and then cross to Mickelson Mile, it's kind of a blind spot. But flashing pedestrian light, it just seems like it shouldn't be that difficult to get something.
I don't think it is, and we'll just have to, let's push it with UDOT. Because it's there right away. I don't know if there's any places in the city where you really want one that's on city property or city right away that could be easier, but it seems like State Street is the big one.
But as far as I know, that's the worst spot in the city. At least what information comes to me on.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Guess I wasn't recorded.
No. I don't have anything else on this item unless you do.
Maybe just the next step on subdivision.
Next step is the planning commission will see a draft
Okay.
of the ordinance, and then we'll have a public hearing. And then they'll make a recommendation and bring it to you.
Have to be as early as, say, next month.
Yeah, April, or I mean, August.
Okay.
August, the planning commission will have a
Okay.
draft
Great.
and most likely a public hearing in September.
To the council right after.
Yep, council could be the first week of October,
Okay. We're on track.
so.
Thanks.
And we have, following legal counsel, we have started following some of the practices already of the subdivision ordinance.
Thank you.
So it does change things, It from it being a city council vote, as the planning commission is the big one, but also you don't have to have a public hearing, it could be a public meeting. There is a built-in schedule that the developer has to make updates and send it back in a certain time, and then the city has to respond and make updates and send it in a certain time. It's very reasonable in terms of the schedule. And also it places a subdivision as an administrative land use decision, so that as long as it meets all, checks all the boxes, then the planning commission should approve it.
Gary gave us a brief update last council meeting
Okay.
and talked about the 4 periods. I'm not sure what you call them, but we're 4 cycles, maybe that's a
Yeah.
good word.
So
go back
so
and
they would
forth.
approve a subdivision and then that comes to city council?
No. Nope. So,
Well, the land use authority approves it, is that right?
yes.
But
And-
that'll need to be determined if, it sounds like.
Yeah, and it could be, and so you decide the land use authority for pre-plat and also a land use authority for final plat. Typically, what most cities are doing is pre-plat is planning commission. And you do require some of the work ahead of time, construction documents, the plat, utilities, figuring that out. Planning commission looks at it. If it meets everything, then they can approve it. And then the final plat would be staff, would be the land use authority in that. And that's detail engineering review, checking all the boxes, making sure it meets all the requirements.
Does the council determine the land use authority?
Yes,
Body?
per ordinance, per subdivision ordinance.
Yeah, it'll be part of the ordinance.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, we'll need to get some direction somewhere on how that is. I understood it could be as little as one person. It could be the entire planning commission.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to think that one through.
Would that involve council input?
Not really,
Okay,
because the idea is that your input came when you developed an ordinance and put that ordinance into place governing the subdivisions. Now, it's a little bit different with the MRO, right?
Mhm.
Because that's a legislative act.
A rezone is, yeah.
Yeah, it's a rezone, it's a legislative act, but your typical subdivision that comes through, you've set the ordinance in place, you've got your engineer that gives his advice, and then you've got the planner that says, yes, checks all these boxes.
right.
And so at that point, the supposition of the legislature was that it ought to be approved.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean the subdivision approval, the land use authority approval or direction. Does some of that come from the council?
Like
Who's
the
going to be our
appointment,
land
I'd
use
say.
authority?
Oh, as to who that is?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
You'll-
you
we'll-
would select that,
we'll get it with input from the council on who that authority will be.
yes. I'm
Okay.
sorry, David.
Yeah.
And that's in the ordinance. The
Sure, yeah.
subdivision ordinance says
Once we
that.
get the direction from the council, we make it part of the ordinance, we codify it
Yes,
or
let's
whatever.
Put it in.
Yeah. yeah,
And
yeah.
one thing, I think we talked about this with the planning commission. If Morgan, if you would like, for smaller subdivisions, it could be staff only.
You can break it up a little bit.
Some cities do that, if it's a 3 lot or less
Okay.
subdivision, then it's just staff and it never even goes to planning commission.
Yeah, so-
That's an option totally up to you. Or if it is, splitting one into two and they're both buildable lots, then it could go through the whole process.
Mhm.
So there could be 2 tracks or it could be a single track.
Okay, good.
So think about that. Sometimes you have that where somebody's just, carving off a lot for their child to build on. And it's just nice to have
Right.
that more simple process.
Yeah.
It could be that way, or it could, also take the normal track.
May make sense, sure. Thank you.
Everybody good? Thanks. Jake.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Our second item is Utopia. Are you with Utopia? You're the man. Yes.
Here, you can borrow mine.
Is Utopia like heaven?
No
Sounds like
limits,
it.
right?
It's always a disappointment when I show up.
Yeah.
Thought this was gonna be really exciting to have a presentation from Utopia. Even worse than that, on your agenda it says Nicole Cottle. and
It's like.
You got a big downgrade from Nicole, and Gary would attest to that, I think, so.
It's arguable,
She had a conflict tonight, so I got to fill in for her. So I'm Roger Timmerman. I'm the executive director at Utopia. We just like to get out every so often and kind of give an update on how things are going and get any feedback from you. And so I got a little presentation to run through, but I'm happy to have a informal conversation about things. She's got the presentation here. You flip over to the next slide. I think you got like a little full screen arrow thing over there too that might help. I don't know, might make it worse. Yeah, let's see if that makes it better. There we go. So a little bit, yeah, Utopia sounds exciting. It's Utopia Fiber. We do broadband, we build fiber networks. Utopia, Gary would be able to tell you the history of where that name came from, probably with Paul Morris back in the day and him, but it's an acronym for the Utah Telecommunications Open Infrastructure Agency. That's a little stretch because we stole 2 letters from open, but it works.
Cool.
We build fiber networks for cities. We're an interlocal entity. It was started by those 11 cities, and there was probably some reason not to be one of those original cities. There's good and bad of that. But once we got things kind of turned around and sorted out and once demand for it was increasing and cities saw that actually it was a really good service, despite some rough starts to the organization. So we started having partners come to us and want to do projects with us. And you guys were pretty early on that list. And we did Woodland Hills and Idaho Falls and Morgan City. You were right there. And we've done a lot since then. We're currently still doing a lot of those. We need to get to the next slide here though. So can I get you to go to the next slide? This is a little timeline. Those were the rough years. So you guys missed that. Dodged a bullet. But you're in the green phase here. So I'm trying to remember where that was. You're kind of in that 2019 is when we did the financing for Morgan City.
Unfortunately, the newspaper didn't miss that. The 04 to 08.
Yeah. No, the criticisms, if you hear, there have been ads against us. They didn't really care to do that as much back when we were struggling, but now that we're really successful, they like to cause some trouble for us. But we're actually doing better than we ever have. So there's
That's fun.
success. I think attracts some opposition. So here's a couple accomplishments here. We are the largest open access network in the country, and just recently we've been. I don't know if they identified or just people kind of called it out and said, hey, with 220,000 addresses that you cover with fiber, that's actually the biggest public network in the country, open access or not. We were smaller than Chattanooga, but now we have surpassed them. 23 cities involved with the fiber to the home projects, but we actually have fiber in over 70 cities. We have the fastest speeds in the country, 10 gig and 100 gig for businesses, but those are a little bit dated. We have a 400 gig connection coming up for the universities. And that'll be the biggest connection in Utah for any individual location. And that's going from St. George to Salt Lake. It's the most competitive open access network in the country. So when you get our fiber, you get lots of choices, right? And there are some other networks out there that allow third parties to come in and use it, but there aren't any that have 18 different choices. We just keep getting companies wanting to provide services. It's almost a problem because there's so many choices, but it makes it hard to pick. But competition's good, and it keeps them honest and competitive, and it keeps their service good. So it's a good thing to have. We've been connecting more schools with UEN than anyone else over the last several years. So we're their preferred provider, and so they still have a lot with some other providers, but we keep getting more and more every time they issue RFPs. And so we've been growing with them more than anyone else. We provide air quality sensors in every installation, which over time has made us the #1 provider of air quality data in the state. So we have them all over the place. Wherever we have network, there's lots of these little sensors out there so if you look at like KSL weather and stuff like that, and it shows air quality, those are our sensors, and you'll see where our little fiber hut is one of the locations where it'll have a sensor. So we do other smart city solutions. We've talked about doing a wildfire camera here, and we haven't seemed to get it done. So I apologize for that. I need to keep pushing our team to get one installed. But in several cities, we have these cameras that kind of scan over high risk areas, and it's a dual camera. It has an optical camera and a thermal camera. And so that can be helpful. I think it's been found more helpful to just identify false positives. They're like, oh, here's another call. Somebody's reporting a fire, and they can look at the camera and say, it's just a car up on the hill or something like that. We've got some like machine learning and AI and stuff that's trying to like figure out how we can automatically detect fires. It is running, but I don't know that it's more of an experiment at this point. But the camera itself, giving that access to first responders or others to go in there and look at things without having to drive out there can be very helpful. So that's in development. We've been working with BYU and some research teams over there to expand the deployment and make it better. But that's just one thing. We've done public Wi-Fi. We've worked with the city on that. We connected a lot of city locations across all the cities. Our Net Promoter Score, that's a score, that's a customer satisfaction score. So you've probably been asked with different services, like, would you recommend this to a friend or colleague? That's a specific question used to calculate a Net Promoter Score. We do surveys every so often, and our result has been a positive 63, and that's, as far as we can tell, the best in the state for all the companies that do broadband and share their scores. We're also top with Google ratings at 4.6 stars. That's actually better than Google Fiber. We love that. So anyways, the main point is that wherever we have our network, it is the best in many ways. We care to be the best. We work for you, we work for cities. And so we are proud of that, but we don't get too cocky about it. We are always trying to improve things and respond to outages and maintain it and upgrade it. If you want to go to the next slide. This just kind of shows the concept of open access, right? We put in the fiber and all these different companies can come in and use it. Most of these are Utah companies. So some people are like, why is government in this? You guys are competing with private sector. And it's like, no, that's the opposite of that. These companies, many of them wouldn't be successful if it weren't for the infrastructure we put in. And now we have these Utah companies that go out there and be, hand over fist better than Comcast and CenturyLink and these corporate companies from Philadelphia and Louisiana and other stuff that are addressing, their shareholders and dividends and all that other stuff. Instead, we have this environment of supporting local Utah companies to be successful and be better. This slide, it kind of just shows the technology we use to connect homes. Everybody gets their own connection. It's a little different even than other fiber providers. Other fiber networks are designed in a way that everybody still shares one fiber connection. You'll have anywhere from 50 or so cut homes to hundreds of homes all sharing one fiber connection. We don't do that because for multiple reasons. It's better to give everybody their own connection, but also because of the open access. We got these different companies and they don't want to have their competitors' customer interfering with their customer and such. So we keep everything isolated. Everybody gets their own connection. And that connection to a home is the equivalent of a connection that feeds an entire city for another fiber provider. So fiber is amazing and cool, but there are better and worse ways of deploying fiber, and ours is the premium best way to do it. We're supporting new technologies. So when we launched and built this here, we had gigabit service was the best service you could get. We had launched 10 gig, and we did get some 10 gig customers in the city, but it was really priced high. It was kind of intentionally that way. Over time, technology has gotten better and the price of devices has come down. And so we recently lowered the price of the 10 gig offering, and we introduced a 2.5 gig tier at a competitive price point. And we're actually seeing a lot of people signing up for 2.5 and 10 gig at the new pricing. We keep developing new apps and improving our ability to troubleshoot and monitor the network. We don't monitor what anybody does, but we do monitor the quality of the service, whether it's up or down. If there's a fiber cut, we automatically know and can dispatch and resolve it quickly. And we continue to support new things as they come out. So these are just pictures like for AI applications or augmented reality and virtual reality, things like that. We keep seeing more and more stuff that's just using more and more bandwidth. And we're ahead of that. We're ready to support all of that technology as it becomes available. Next slide. Okay, customers. So yeah, Gary probably appreciates this because he's worked with a lot of the cities. If you remember, 10 years ago would be the beginning of this, and we had about 11,000 subscribers across all of the networks we had. And now we're up about 66,000 subscribers across all of our networks. And so demand has gone up. The reach of the network has expanded significantly. And it's been good. So anyways, next slide. This is by city. You guys are kind of at the dark green line at the bottom of the greens. That's kind of hard to see in here. I have you guys broken out in another slide, but you see demand has been up everywhere. Some of these are new projects where they've started in the last several years, but even the ones that were early, we've continued to see demand go up. And as we've made the service better and more competitive, it's brought customers everywhere. Next slide. So this is when we did your project. So, you didn't have anything. Availability is where we have fiber available. So we came in and built it and we're like, okay, we're done. We've got all the city covered and it's about 1,400 addresses. Well, you guys kept adding addresses. So since that time, we've added almost 400 new addresses to the city. I don't know what your numbers look like as far as new properties and things over time, but from our perspective, it's looked like about 400. So we've had to continue to build and expand the system here to keep up with that. And then we keep installing more and more people. So the next slide shows how many people are actually connected. So we're up about 1,200. If we were to go back in time and say, you remember this original pitch? Like we needed to build this thing and we needed to get about a 30 to 35% take rate. Well, that came out to about, I don't know, like 450 customers or something.
Like
Oh,
I
is
said,
that
it's
what it-
500.
Well-
I think the take rate, we were sweating.
There,
Jeez, we're gonna get that? Are you kidding me?
Holy crap, we get to do this?
so we pitched it with some buffer in it. When we actually closed on the bond, it was lower because of the buffer. And so when we actually looked at the debt service, it was less than 500. It was like 400 something. So you actually were safer than you thought you were going into it. And yeah, we've over doubled the number of subscribers we needed. Which is, it's good and bad, actually. You think it'd be all good, but you know, we'd have to spend more money, right? We've had to grow the network as the city's grown, and each installation costs us a decent amount of money. But the revenue's been higher than we expected, so it kind of has helped, right? We haven't had to come back and say, hey, we need you to, you know, cover a next phase of the project. It's been incremental over time, and so we've been able to finance that separately from the city, and then use the additional revenues to pay for that new debt and rinse and repeat. So it's great. It's you have this fiber system in the city that's paying for itself with plenty of buffer. People seem to really like it. We'll go to the next slide.
What would cause a dip in the subscribers? It's like 21.
If some magical, the dip that was in there.
Yeah, there on that in the prior slide, there was a dip.
Oh, so the prior one, I don't know. We've had
July of 21 roughly.
this record that we use for this number comes from the county. And so what we would attribute to that is that they messed up.
Okay.
So we'll import their records and
Mhm.
update those. And so if the number of parcels that are in your city goes down, it goes down. Now, it's not likely that actually happened.
Mhm.
It's more likely that they just had a correction.
Probably accounts for the small dip in the subscribers then.
Well, the subscriber one, I don't think went down. That's just the availability.
About the
went
same
down, I
time.
think.
Go back one
Did
slide.
it go down?
Yeah, look at that, July of 21. It looks like there's a little dip right there. Yeah, right there.
That's just flat.
That's
I
what-
don't know, maybe there was,
Nobody signed up. They
yeah,
were all out vacationing.
There we go,
It was
yeah.
July
I
of
don't-
21,
We're
remember?
at the lake. right?
COVID, we
Yeah.
were all going, I'm out of here.
yeah, maybe it was that, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't significant enough to.
Competition
Worry about
doesn't
it.
take customers away from you then on a
No,
large
in
scale.
fact, I mean, when we do that math on it, it looks like you guys have a 67% take rate. When I actually pull up this map, which actually maps out real customers on the map, you're way above 67%. Like almost everybody has it. And what that is you have parcels that may not have a house on them, and those count against us. But the reality is, I mean, we don't have a good way to tell whether there's a house on a parcel or not. But when we look at a map, it looks like you probably have 5% that don't have it, maybe 5 to 10% that don't have it. Like it's very, very popular. It's the highest take rate we have in any city. Not by enormous amount. I mean, Woodland Hills is pretty close. But they're in a similar situation. They didn't have Comcast. They had part of the city with Comcast. You guys don't have any Comcast. And CenturyLink's terrible and the wireless providers aren't great. So there's not a lot of reason not to get it. And we see that. We appreciate that. It's great. Kind of wish we had that in every city, but we continue to do well across all our other cities. But to have a voluntary service offered to residents of a city and have this sort of uptick, this was a really good decision. Like it's for you and us, it's been great. you know, as I mentioned, it's cost us more than we expected. You know, we went over budget on the original project, so internally we were a little worried about that. We probably went over by about $500,000 and we're like, oh crud, you know, if we don't overachieve on this project, we'll be hurting financially. And then we had more installations. And so we may still be underwater, but we still have a solid, very solid revenue that's above what is needed for the bond. So I'm not complaining or anything. It's just, it's a good situation, but it isn't like there's money sitting somewhere, or a big pile of cash. But it's nice that we've been able to kind of cycle that into the cities collectively to continue to grow it and pay for installations without having to go and ask for any pledges or cash infusions or anything like that. They do, it's just that's big, and so one dot might be on like the corner of the property or something. I think the high school actually doesn't. They got a 5-year contract right before we built. And so we'll get them on the renewal. But other schools are on it. So it's when that's the way UEN does it, is on a 5-year contract. So that was one that we were a little bit upset. In fact, it wasn't that, it was after we had fiber in the city, but we didn't have fiber to I think it's the Hearst Center at Weber State. That's where they get all their connectivity for the Morgan schools. They all have to go back to Weber State, and we didn't have fiber to that. In the last, I think it was like a year after they awarded that, we built in there, not specifically for Morgan, but for all of the schools in the school districts, several school districts. So we'd be eligible for those. But we've been getting them, the ones that, do you have an elementary school and a high school? Do you have a middle school?
All three.
All three?
Right there next to each
So
other.
I don't know which, I know we have like one of them, maybe two, but not the high school. That one went in late. So, but we'll get it on the renewal.
I don't see it in our industrial area.
Do you see blue dots? Can you, I don't know.
Oh, okay, yes,
Blue-
there are blue dots.
So blue dots are connections.
Okay,
They're-
okay.
Those are business connections.
Yeah.
And the red dots
It
are
is.
residential.
I got a question.
Sorry, they're harder to see.
I got a question,
Uh-huh.
Roger. It appears that on some of this, go back that slider, Denise, thank you. Nope, other one. The one with the
Map?
dots. It appears on that map that outside of the city, we've branched out a little bit out into the county. Is that correct? Because down
little
like
bit.
where I'm at on the Island Road, some of those down the end of the road, they're not in the city, but we've definitely got red dots down there, which
Yeah. We-
which I appreciate. I'm not getting after you. I appreciate that. So have we
Where
branched
it's
into
made
out?
sense, we've done a little bit of it. We're like, well, are they getting Morgan Power?
Well, not clear down the road there, though. What? Yeah, like down in there.
You want me to
That's
like
your
cut some
ponds.
people off or?
No, I'm
just
saying
kidding.
it's a good thing. I'm not being critical. And even over like by the Y over there on Young Street, we branched out into there a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gone in and said we'll do anything, but if it's like
I'm
right
getting-
out of the
yeah,
network, we'll.
if it kind of makes sense. Cause, yeah, I was looking over like the fairgrounds and stuff. It'd be nice to get something over in that area, over in that vicinity it'd be nice to have it at the fairgrounds, but that's why I was asking, how far out we gonna branch? Do you think in the future to the county? I mean, cause it kind of, not that it matters. 'Cause we're in the city.
Well, I mean, last time we talked to the county, they were like, well, this area we can't help you with because we gave a bunch of money to Beehive to do it. And so we're like
It's a mess.
competing with county
Oh,
money. and-
Gotcha. Okay. That's all I needed.
I mean, we would love to provide service everywhere. But yeah, once we're outside of the city, we kind of go to the county and be like, do you want us to provide service?
Yeah. Just one more thing. I just gotta say, it was, when we did this, none of us realized what was gonna happen in the future. It was definitely, I'll say it this way, a blessing to have
Oh,
fiber
boy.
when COVID hit.
Yeah.
It was, we truly, that was.
It made us look smart.
Yeah, it really did. And on that, making us look smart, everywhere I travel quite a bit for work, and I brag about what kind of setup I have at home. like my kind of speed, and having fiber to the house is
You
like,
bet.
I brag about it everywhere I'm at, because it's a game changer. So thank you for the service that you provide, and thank you for, I mean, I guess I'm saying thank you to all of us for having the insight too, to say, let's pull the trigger and go.
Take a
'Cause,
chance on it.
yeah,
I think we're all like mutually happy with how
Mhm.
things have been. It's
I
been
I
good
have been.
for us and the city. and-
I'm like Eric, every time I'm with a county official.
Jab them, you know,
Pretty.
what kind of connectivity you got at your house? You know?
It's usually an elbow, not a.
They have dial-up, right?
Yeah, you know, and it's funny, you talk to people though, and I'll say it this way, now I almost take it for granted for what I have at home. I really do. And yet you travel and you start talking to people about, you know, and I tell you what, so it's like we're in a different league, a different game. Like, I'm
I
like,
mean,
don't
you've
even
got better
remember what
connectivity.
buffering is. Like, buffer, what's that?
Yeah, I mean, you have better connectivity than most major cities. Even Salt Lake Valley, where we have some Utopia cities and there's some Google Fiber, there's still a whole bunch of cities that don't have any fiber option to their homes. And there's still, you know, this has been the worst Comcast year ever. They've had so many outages and problems. And so cities are frantic, it's like how many years past COVID and they still are like, this is critical and we've been suffering and, we want something and they're just kind of can't seem to get behind anything or support anything and still have terrible connectivity. Meanwhile, Morgan's had phenomenal connectivity for how many years was that? Are we in 4 or 5 years? 4 years?
There's an interruption to the service. You're prompt. You're very good.
Yes, I've noticed that also. There's been a few times where it seems like something's gone wrong or something, and it's been very quick to get it fixed, so.
I can't remember who was telling me this. Seemed like somebody that would know that we're actually faster speeds in our national capital.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the broadband's terrible in the capital.
Okay.
I mean,
Maybe that's
low
why
bar.
everything else is so slow, huh?
Well, I mean, on that first slide, I'm like, you have the best speeds in the country and they're at a good price point, right?
Yeah.
It is the leader. I mean, you should be proud of that. Like, this isn't, hey, we're among the best of rural cities or whatever. It's like, no, you are better than most metropolitan major markets. In fact, all of them, like literally all of them. None of them have better service than you have. And you have multiple options to pick and choose from that compete for your service. None of the major cities in the country have that. So anyways, we love it and we think you guys like it and we're going to keep at it and make sure it's good and competitive and, that our technicians are maintaining it and upgrading and there's still some out there who haven't signed up and we're going to still try to get them on and then we'll keep up with you as you grow and add homes and all that. So. Yeah, that's all I have. Any other questions for us?
Just kind of some interesting statistics. The national definition of broadband, where do you think it sits? As far as megabits? 50 megabit, isn't it? They raised
It depends what you're saying. When they're saying what you have, it's 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload is considered broadband and served.
Yeah.
Now, government subsidies, what you build has to support 100 megabit down, 20 meg up. So they're saying the new standard we're moving towards is 100 by 20. And we're like, we have 10,000 by 10,000. I mean, that's what 10 gig is. It's 10,000 megabits, right? Like, and every single address in this city can get that today. Like, it's ridiculous where these standards are.
That's why I
federally.
brag. I
No,
do. I
that's-
brag everywhere I go. I'm like, man, I'm telling you.
And a little known fact is that it does add about $3,000 to $5,000 to the value of a home if you have effective internet. If you have you have the equivalent of dial-up and not able to get the services that you need, you can't work from home anymore. It's become even more increasingly important since COVID to be able to work from home because now that's pretty much the standard. Morgan is the ideal place to be able to build a home and work from home and still enjoy everything that you have here in Morgan, but not have to go in to the office. You had great foresight. You didn't know COVID was coming.
Well, at the time, I remember thinking, yeah, I don't know about this, and we're gonna be able to make
I
this
hope
many
we can
people
get
sign up.
500.
I was thinking, man, we're either gonna be really smart or really dumb.
Well, I think Mayor Little and Ty had the courage to push it.
All works this week.
So it's good stuff.
Crystal ball.
What's coming next? Oh, I can't say that.
We'll talk.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a speed dial to training, Gary?
Speed dial training. Let's just talk about just a couple of points. I thought maybe what we do is hit on ex parte communications and maybe closed meetings. Because there's a couple of, those are issues that you're kind of facing right now. First, it's interesting because when you're elected, as elected officials, you're elected to listen to everybody. And it doesn't matter who it is. Down at the grocery store, you're gonna get pulled aside. They're gonna talk to you about something. Garbage didn't get picked up. The water's not working properly. The parks don't look so good, or this, whatever, a pothole. You'll learn about that. However, on those issues where you are going to be required to make a decision, I just give a word of caution. And that is that allow the process to work, allow the developer to spend time, and encourage the developer to spend time with those that are involved in development, the neighbors, that type of thing, because that works. If they can communicate back and forth, that works tremendously. It prevents this type of thing from happening. I remember we had one particular council person who had a neighborhood that were very opposed to a sign. And you might remember this back in time. The sign was very negative about the war in Iraq and the soldiers that were dying and that type of thing. He had it on his front lawn. And they had a meeting. And when they had a meeting, they invited one or two of the council people, which were neighbors. And the council people went. But what ended up happening the night of that the actual decision had to be made by the council was that many things were attributable to these two council people as a result of those ex parte communications. Ex parte means outside of your council. And so the rest of the council weren't privy to that. And that's the problem with ex parte communications, is the rest of the council is not, unless you come in and you represent the neighborhood, which, you know, they generally do on their own anyway, especially on legislative matters. They'll come in, they'll give you information. But the bottom line is you can get caught in situations where what you say may be represented in a certain way, not in context with what you as a council mean. The rest of the council also may not be privy to all of that information. So just a word of caution to the council. As far as the planning commission is concerned, there's an absolute, the planning commission's job, they have one job, and that is to represent the ordinance, to advocate the ordinance. They don't represent, you know, it's not a democracy or as far as that goes, the planning commission goes, they are the enforcement arm of the city when it comes to making sure the ordinance is properly applied and properly enforced. So they should not be having any ex parte communications or outside communications with, other than official meetings where you have staff there and planning commission is convened together as a body. There really shouldn't be one planning commission member that meets with a neighborhood, or one planning commission member that meets even with the developer outside of the context of the process that is rolling forward. Let the process work. Listen to the comments that are made. A lot of the comments I notice you've got some in writing tonight. That's excellent. Those are good things. Those are good questions. Staff can be involved in helping you answer. Same thing with the planning commission. Staff will be involved in helping them answer some of the questions that will come from the public. So that's just kind of a 5-minute overview of ex parte communications. It's not prohibited for city council people, for elected officials, to do that, but it is strongly ill-advised. Just because you're probably going to get into trouble if you do it, just from the context of you've got very strong emotions on both sides. Let the process work through that and encourage in every way you can communication between the developer and the citizens. And then during the planning commission process, encourage participation there. That's number one, really quick one. Closed meetings, just a caution there. North Logan, did you see a KSL article on North Logan and the problems they got into as a result of a judge has made a determination. They had a corner piece of property that only had access to a backfield through that corner piece of property. In other words, this great big backfield is landlocked. The city's master plan showed a street going through that particular area. And so they, during the course of their conversations, they would close the meeting and they would talk about the acquisition of that property, maybe perhaps through eminent domain. Is that appropriate, by the way, appropriate subject if you're looking at acquiring property, to close a meeting if you're going to try and acquire property?
Only if it's posted.
So on every single agenda, and this is another issue that came up, at the bottom of the agenda, we do have an indication that a closed meeting may occur. What happens if during the course of your meeting, somebody stands up and says, you know what, we're gonna litigate this. We're gonna move forward and we're gonna sue the city over this. And if we don't get an immediate answer as to how to handle this. I've seen city councils at that time, because that little notice at the bottom is there, you have a right and you can close the meeting to specifically talk about those subjects you're allowed to talk about in the closed meeting, which are pending litigation, personnel issues, real estate issues, and security issues. You can also talk about if there's for example, if there was a pending criminal charge against somebody, you can close that off. But so the judge, interestingly enough, said that North Logan described these things as being executive sessions. And just because of that term in the Open Meetings Act, it identifies executive sessions as being kind of like when you go on a tour of something, it's still an open meeting and minutes are still going to be kept and people are able to see what is contained in those minutes. So the judge made a determination that all of their closed meetings regarding this parcel of property and its acquisition should be open. And so he's released the minutes. They're appealing that. And I think ultimately they'll prevail because there are details in those meetings regarding the acquisition of that property that really should have been kept confidential. And the judge has an obligation to look at the minutes of a meeting and to make a determination whether or not the meeting should have legitimately been closed. So the lessons from that are, number one, make sure we've noticed it properly, which Denise always does. And I appreciate that. On the bottom of your agenda, you'll always see a little provision that says you may open a closed meeting during the course of this thing. And you call it a closed meeting. You don't call it an executive session, which is good. You limit it to the subjects that you're allowed to talk, about in a closed meeting. And then the last thing is make sure you open it properly and that you you don't make any decision in the closed meeting, right? And then you move into your open meeting to actually close the meeting ultimately. So, and end the meeting, adjourn the meeting. But it was interesting how that judge interpreted that section. Just one little word ended up in opening up all the minutes of, I think there were 16 meetings that had all been closed by the Logan City Council. And so closed meetings have their purpose, and their purpose is not to keep things away from the public, but they're, for example, in the case of acquisition, if you're talking about the price you're going to pay for a parcel of property or, the appraised value, do you want that out there? And the answer is no. It takes the city's advantage away from them, just as it would a private investor takes the advantage away from them if somebody knows what you're willing to pay for it before they actually, before that comes out publicly. So those are the two issues, and we're exactly on the hour. And so we'll, looks like you've got a few folks here tonight, and so just maybe some general comments so everybody can work with it. And that is that when you have a large group, if there's one person that represents the whole group, that's a great idea. So that the same thing is not said over and over and over again. The city council's here to listen. Especially in the public comment period, you listen, and then staff's taking notes. I'll be over there furiously taking notes. I will too, about any legal issues. And so will Jake about any planning issues. But limit, I think we've got a 3-minute limit on time period anyway. And so it should move pretty smoothly. But any comments that this is excellent, whoever, put comments in writing, encourage that, because everybody can read it. You guys have all got it in front of you, and I just went through it real quickly, and Jake can take a look at it as well. So any questions? I've gone over 2 minutes, but that was kind of the speed reading course on
Good work.
on
Thank
those
you.
two issues.
Thanks,
Extra
Gary.
communications.
Gary.
Open meetings.
Appreciate it. Before we begin, does anybody, we're all gray haired, does anybody need to make a run?
I do, but I don't have any. That's why.
We need to adjourn
Oh.
our last meeting.
Our work meeting's adjourned.
You're good.
They really want me to use this. I don't use this very much, so. Brother Gail, that's the owner. Well, you're a witness. That's, doesn't happen very often. Welcome, everybody, to our city council meeting, July 9th, 2024. And I don't know if it's, a bad rumor that goes out there or not, but for the most part, we're excited to have residents. In fact, we wished more residents would show up at all of our meetings, because it sometimes puts a responsibility on us that we don't have much input on. So we appreciate everybody being here. We'll begin with the pledge. Eric, I can always call on you. And Jeffrey, could you give our opening ceremony after?
Yep.
We'll all stand, repeat with me the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the evening this summer that thou hast blessed us with to meet here in the Morgan City Chambers to be able to discuss the affairs and the opportunities and the responsibilities that are happening here within our community. We ask as we have discussions and we work through issues tonight that we'll be able to think and speak and understand clearly, that we'll be able to get our points across and be able to share our thoughts and ideas. We're grateful for this valley and the community that we live in, and for our ancestors that have worked so hard to provide the blessing of being here for us. And as we look to the future, that we'll be able to make decisions and do those things that will continue to make Morgan a safe, lovely place to live for our children and grandchildren. We're grateful for this time of year to reflect on our freedoms and opportunities, and bless that each one of us will work to protect our individual freedoms and our local freedoms, and to be able to do those things that will help all of us be able to move into the future clearly. And we ask again that thy spirit will be here and we'll be able to recognize and understand and view each other as friends. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. And I see if there's an approval of the meeting's agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have approval of tonight's meeting from Eric and a second from Jeffrey. Let's go on to item 2, the consent agenda. Minutes of the city council special meeting, June 20th, 2024, and warrants 0614, 0702, 24. So anybody got any discussion on that?
Got a couple of corrections, Steve.
Okay,
On, let's see, on page 5, right about the middle of the page, right below the roll call vote there, Denise, we've got 3 voting in favor and 2 are absent, but yet we've put vote was 5 ayes. Motion passed unanimously. So it was unanimous, but there were only 3. And then the second resolution 2424 was the same. It was 5 ayes and 2 absent. Thank you.
good eye, Dave.
I don't read it that
Mayor, I'd move to approve the minutes of the city council special meeting, June 2024. And I've reviewed the warrants and moved to approve those of 6/14 to 7/2/2024.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the minutes of the city council special meeting, June 20th, 2024, and the warrants 06/14 to 07/02/24. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, we're gonna move on to the citizen comments. I'd first like, is anybody not signed in? Everybody signed in? On that table? Okay, perfect. I'm not gonna really call up. We have some of you filled out the open comment forms, which we all appreciate very much. So I'll just take them in the order I have them. Brett Boss.
They have an order that they wanted to do.
Oh, you have an order? Okay. If you could step up to that podium, push the
Make sure it's
the
green.
green lights on.
Mayor, can I ask a question? Is it limited to only those who submitted comment cards?
It just depends. I'm not against not having one filled in. But if it's the same repetition, then I think we need to consider that. The other thing that everybody has to remember is we won't make comments and we won't be voting on it. But it's good to have the information because it will be discussed. And we really need to limit it to about 3 minutes per remark. But after we have the ones in print, then I'll entertain to see if there's some more comments. Is that fair? Hey, Brett, did I say that right? It's not
Yep.
Brand, it's Brett.
Yep, Brett Boss, 586 East Red Rock Way. There's gonna be a few of us. We're going from a kind of a plan that we're gonna cover different parts, but it's all kind of the same idea. As you can see, we've got quite a few people here from the Red Rock neighborhood because a presentation was shared in a planning commission meeting earlier this year that would rezone a couple undeveloped parcels in our neighborhood. We understood that these parcels would be developed at some point, but our understanding and expectation based on the city plan, plat maps, and other things was that the development would be the same as our existing neighborhood, which is zoned and constructed as R112 and as RR along the hillside. Our purpose here tonight is just to raise awareness of our concerns of rezoning this area for high-density housing. That's what the plan was for. High-density housing using an MRO that was part of that presentation. Our hope is that, we'll be able to work with you to find an agreeable way to move forward and have this land developed, and grow our city and our neighborhood. The first point we'd like to make is that we do believe that the MRO in this location does not actually meet city code right now. According to Morgan City Code 10.15.010, under MRO purpose, the first statement in the MRO purpose is, this residential overlay zone is intended for infill development, end quote. So what is infill development? Another spot in the city code, 10.04.010 under definitions. It says development of land that has been bypassed, remained vacant, and or is underused because of current market conditions. Infill development is not on the perimeter of the city, located near outer annexation areas and upper hillsides. We have found alternative sources for the definition of infill development to mean within urban areas, and we'd be happy to provide those sources to you as well. But these all point to the same thing, within an urban area. Our neighborhood is on the perimeter of the city. It is near hillsides, and there have been plans that we've heard of annexing more area in our neighborhood. So it doesn't seem like it's an infill development area. But that being said, we want to also discuss that there are reasons for having high-density housing near urban centers and to keep MROs near urban centers. First reason, maybe that if we abandon, we just passed the MRO ordinance last year. And if we decide to abandon its whole purpose in just 1 year, seems a little bit premature. I don't think we have a functioning MRO yet in the city limits. So we don't have any feedback on MROs yet. So obviously, we think that original intent should stand. We also think that since the MRO was passed, that it's likely lots of developers will look at that and say, let's try an MRO. Because MROs allow for a lot of high density housing. Again, we need to strategically plan out where the city wants to go with MROs for the future. And we're hoping we can help with that planning. I think I'm about out of time. So who wants to? Okay. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Paddock. I live at 524 East Ridgeline. My backyard would border this property. And we're continuing with the same thought here. So the three of us in sequence here. High density housing causes increased traffic on the main thoroughfare to daily and weekly necessities. In high density neighborhoods, this need increases as a higher rate than in low density neighborhoods. High density neighborhoods are close to urban areas. If they're close to urban areas, then the impact of the traffic is going to be limited. We're also concerned about the noise level. We feel that in an urban area, there's already going to be a lot of action or, population. So the impact would be less than in this area where this is possibly coming in. High density housing increases the need for city and county services. Having high density housing closer to the library and schools means decreased traffic and transportation times. High density housing is often associated with affordable housing. When high density housing is within walking distance to groceries and downtown shopping during the winter, it increases its affordability. When it's not, families need possibly a second vehicle to access their necessities. High density housing requires more thoughtful consideration of parking. Having services nearby reduces the need for those additional vehicles. We believe there are specific reasons to not have an MRO in our neighborhood, including the aforementioned. The parcels in the current city plan are shown as low to medium density housing with 3 to 4 houses per acre and rural residential. If we allow a developer to turn R112 and RR zoned areas on the edge of the city into high density housing, we are signaling to other developers that all future development in Morgan can be high density. A base rezoning in this area on the edge of the city may create uncertainty in what will actually be built. We have individuals in our neighborhood who are involved with growth plans of other cities in the Wasatch Front, and they've warned us that it is not uncommon for a developer to come in, rezone, and then flip that property as a rezoned property will increase its value. So we have no assurance that what the developer tells us is exactly what will happen if, as soon as that is rezoned, it becomes, a greater commodity. An MRO would. An MRO. Was that my timer? Okay. We'll pass it on to Jill.
So, and sorry, my name is Jill Boss. I live at 586 East Red Rock Way. And an MRO can dramatically reduce the privacy for the residents that border that new neighborhood. The new homes planned behind Red Rock and Ridgeline, if they are high density, they're apt to be 2 to 3 stories, which will significantly impact that area. With the houses only being 10 feet setback on the back line of the property and 5 feet setback on the sides, that's pretty much a wall of homes there. So each existing lot that borders that area would end up with about 3 homes roughly behind them, rather than just one neighbor. It would be about 3 to 4.
You're good, that was not 3 minutes.
Those 30 seconds, maybe?
I'm old, I don't know how to run this.
Where's your grandkids?
We got a kid.
Should I keep going?
Go ahead.
Yes.
So there have been some flooding issues in the back behind in that field and along that ridge line there. So an MRO could increase the flooding if the existing water retention in the winter in that area of the proposed MRO is not addressed properly. There's a significant ravine that comes down that hillside and it dumps a lot of water in the spring with the runoff. And our neighbors have come up with some plans and some way to mitigate that, but they have to move that snow and move that water into the city drainage system. So high density housing will have less open land and increase that risk of flooding. So we propose that if one has not already been done, that a soil survey be conducted before any plan is approved or accepted to help assist addressing these concerns. The MRO, with those, if the higher houses or if the taller houses go in there, there's already some freezing issues over there where some of those properties don't see the sun in the winter, and it would increase that with the height of those homes back there. An MRO could cause safety issues due to increased traffic. Currently, the path of 100 South to State Street is used by commuters, shoppers, cyclists, runners, and parents for school drop-off and pickup for 3 different schools at 3 different times of the day. There are also many community cycling and running events that start at Riverside Park and come around that way. 2 years ago, Como Springs was considering using 100 South as part of their access, and that was, general access was turned down. The neighborhood was concerned about that safety, and the mayor and the city council and the commission members decided that only we were able to allow just emergency vehicles and overload vehicles that wouldn't go over the bridge to come down there, for which we greatly appreciate. But by putting this MRO there, we would be increasing the traffic just in a different way. So we have discussed how high density housing is better suited to be in urban areas because of traffic, noise, emergency services, city services, affordable housing, and parking. We've shared our perspective on how an MRO in our neighborhood would negatively affect privacy, flooding, freezing, and safety. Hopefully, we've shown that an MRO in this part and this location is currently against city code and ordinances, and have given you sufficient reasons why the ordinance should remain as written and why our neighborhood should remain zoned R112 and RR. As the process moves forward, we look forward to working with you and supporting you as a city council as you make difficult decisions to find satisfactory ways to grow our neighborhood and our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ken Tilby. I may give a little bit of redundancy here, but I wanted to put a little bit of a human element into this. I'm also here to express concerns over the proposed
Ken?
601 East Ridgeline Drive. I'm at the very end of the cul-de-sac in Ridgeline. I'm here to express concerns over the proposed MRO rezone and high-density housing bordering the Red Rock subdivision just off 100 South. I love Morgan. I am here and specifically chose the Red Rock neighborhood near the mountain and on the perimeter of the city
in order to enjoy open space and avoid housing structures right on top of me. We have invested our lives here. If the proposed high-density neighborhood goes through as planned, we would have 3 houses within feet of our backyard and kitchen area. I don't even want my own kids that close. A high-density neighborhood adjacent to our subdivision makes no sense in my mind. It would seem that Morgan City Code agrees, as highlighted by the MRO language within the code, which states that the residential overlay zone is intended for infill development. The city proceeds to define infill development as not being on the perimeter of the city located near outer annexation areas and upper hillsides. These not characteristics perfectly meet the characteristics of the land proposed for the MRO development near the Red Rock neighborhood. I believe this code was written or adopted by the city as is with wisdom and intent. I believe that allowing MRO rezoning at the edge of the Red Rock neighborhood is clearly against city code. We understand the purpose of high-density housing. We also understand Utah state requirements for more affordable housing. We are not against development, and we are not against the high-density housing where it makes sense and fits within code. I would suggest that the city consider adopting a rule that anywhere high-density housing is approved next to an existing neighborhood, there would be a requirement for green space between the existing homes and the new development structures as much as possible as a courtesy to existing residents who are here also for open space. I would ask Morgan City to abide by its code and propose that any rezoning that might occur in the proposed development off 100 South would match the existing zoning of the Red Rock neighborhood. This proposal would meet city code. Thank you for your time and consideration. We look forward to a bright future for Morgan City and its residents.
Thank you. Just off the cuff, do you want me to tell my grandkids you don't want them that close? Is there anybody else? Okay, well, thank you for your comments. Just want you to know they don't fall on, maybe some of us have hearing aids, but they don't fall on deaf ears, and we appreciate your input. Appreciate the way you've handled yourselves, and thank you very much.
So Mayor, this is my neighborhood. There's a barbecue after the meeting at Kenneth's house. Head on over.
You're invited to, Dave.
We'll do it. Appreciate everybody coming. And a good point by Steve there is we hear concerns loud and clear. So thank you. I'd maybe just ask by show of hands, is there anybody that has a differing opinion than what we've just heard? Okay, because sometimes, I mean, there's pros and cons on some events that we do public hearings for. So I'm not surprised. Again, your comments are heard loud and clear, so thank you.
All right, we appreciate you. You can either stay to listen to the rest of the meeting, or you're free to go.
You go to the barbecue.
Thank you.
I know everybody's telling me, but is there one individual, like the developer wanted to get together with these folks? Is there a contact person? Would it be Mr. Brett Boss?
Yeah, just looking at the neighborhood and the dynamics, Brett would be a good person to make contact with. And he's, I'm sure his contact information is there. Yeah, it's a great point.
We do have his information on it.
It's in here.
Okay. We'll move on to item 4, which is a public hearing on amendment to Title I, Chapter 1.
You're red.
It is now. It is now. That's funny. That's the way it is at our house. when the hearing aids come out. It's kind of funny. Amendment to Title I, Chapter 1-15, Consolidated Fee Schedule of the Morgan City Code, enacting a business license fee for transient lodging facilities, short-term rentals, amending electric service charges and water rates. Do I have a motion to open?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we open public hearing.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Okay, Denise, we have a motion to open and we have a second.
We all need to vote. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Okay, who have we got here to speak on that, Ty?
Well, it's
Public,
public, we'll take public input now and then close the meeting. We can talk about it after as a council.
I guess the description that I read is gonna be enough then. Is there any public input? And I don't see anybody online.
Man, there's several of you out there I know have an opinion. Scott. Well, we're happy to have you here. Dan,
Okay, with no public input.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
no, I'll second that again.
Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, let's, I was toying with being kind to some that are at the bottom of the agenda. Is that okay with everybody? If we move some things forward ahead?
So, Mayor,
What,
if I may, I'd also suggest on item 5, maybe we do 5B before we do 5A.
Okay,
Just so we don't adopt a fee schedule if we don't end up
If we don't
adopting
pass the-
the actual resolution.
Yeah.
good eye.
And then, anyway, I should have done that when you adopted the agenda, but anyway.
well, we can,
We'll just go in order. Let's go change item B to item A. Is
Yeah.
that all right? Item A, review action. Amendment to Morgan City Code by enacting Title III, Chapter 3-08, Transient Lodging Facilities, Ordinance 2409. Ty, do you want to?
Sure. So this is a topic that we've talked about a couple times in the past. We definitely decided we didn't want to deal with short-term rentals in the land use code. We decided as staff that it would be much more manageable as a business license. So this ordinance does two things. One, it requires a business license. So if someone's going to have a short-term rental, then we make an application and we just make a checklist of the stuff that's in the pages. So it could be pretty straightforward. But the other thing it does is for those that are trying to do short-term rentals, it gives them a legitimate path forward. So if they do have a complaint or a bad stay experience or whatnot, they have a business license to say, I went to the city and I checked all the boxes and I'm running a legitimate operation here because I complied with all of the requirements. So that's kind of the overall path where we've been on. We did hold a work session and then we had a follow-up meeting. I think David was there. Eric and Stephanie, myself and Gary. Anyway, we went through it. So what you have in your packet reflects some of those changes that we made to the proposed anyway, the proposal. So those changes are highlighted in there. Gary's reviewed it most recently. And that's just for your consideration. Did you want me to go through any of the changes page by page or?
I just have one question on it, on, page 2. The administration fee. Transit lodging facility, short terms, what does that, what's the time limit on it? Is that renewable every year when a business license is renewed, or?
Yeah, it's an annual business license.
Well, that's the only question I had.
And then in the,
Gary?
go ahead.
I just had one question. As I was going through, I was looking at the parking regulations. And there are different parking regulations for whole house rentals than there are for, if you rent a room, Airbnb versus VRBO. They've advertised extensively. And the question I had was the whole home rental says that you need one parking space per bedroom. That is the same requirement for the individual, bedroom type rental. And I'm wondering if that's logical. If you're renting a home for under 30 days as a short-term rental, do you really want, if you have a 4-bedroom home or 3-bedroom home, that's more parking spaces than we actually require of just a general home. So I was wondering if that wasn't put in there inadvertently, or whether that's what you actually meant. I know you meant it on the room. I mean, every room should have a parking space because it's a different person in every room. But I wondered if you meant it on the whole home. If you would mean to do that on the side.
I think the thought process behind that, Gary, is it was trying to keep so that we didn't have 20 cars parked on the side of a road because they're having a family reunion at a house, and you ended up with all these cars parked on the side of the road. I think is what we were trying to get around on that deal, is so that you kind of had some parking available for how many people would be in that home instead of halfway down the street, cars parked along the street, I think is what the thought and intent there was, Gary.
I think that's exactly right. The first number 1 in there, it's no tenant, guest, or other person visiting a whole home vacation rental or short-term rental shall park on the public street.
See, and I think that's what we were trying to prevent there, Gary. Now, if we need to change the verbiage somehow or something, but it just comes down to I think that was the thought process there.
Jake has a thought.
I'm okay with it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think requiring the parking is good, but telling them they can't park on the street, I mean, people are gonna do that naturally. But I think requiring one stall per bedroom is probably good, and
You do allow for tandem parking.
Yeah, and I'd say this too, there's always gonna be, somebody's always gonna park on the street. I mean, we talked about it when we were originally going through the ordinance. I mean, you're pulling a boat or pulling a trailer, or you're pulling a, whatever it might be, there's no way you're gonna park it in the driveway. So inadvertently, you'll probably end up with some on-street parking. But I think the thought and intent of the ordinance is just to try to mitigate that on-street parking as much as possible, because you get down where I live, there is no curb and gutter, the street's pretty narrow anyway. So then you add on top of that, people parking on both sides of the road, and it gets really narrow. So I think that was kind of the thought behind that. Is why we kept it in there.
How could that be changed, Gary? Any recommendation?
I think it's fine the way that it is,
Okay,
just based on what Eric's.
okay.
proposed, so.
I mean, a family renting a home probably isn't gonna need 4 cars or 4 spaces, but a family renting a home that's invited.
They could, I mean.
How-
Yeah, they could. If you're in St. George. and-
More than immediate family, you could.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I was in violation in Arizona with my family.
Yeah, if it's,
I parked on the street because there are
I've been
3
there
other
too.
cars in the driveway. So.
Good. Thank you. That's the only concern.
Street parking.
I'm associated with an Airbnb, so maybe the language needs to be not parking on the street outside of that house.
So I think it's common to park in front of the house you're visiting, you know, if they're having some guests over. But I absolutely see your concern that if you're taking the neighbors parking on both sides and even across the street, you're gonna have unhappy neighbors. But you might want to word it that on-street parking in front of the house they're occupying might be allowed. Yeah. My main concern is how we're gonna enforce it.
With anything, you know, zoning typical, well, this isn't zoning per se, typical enforcement is by complaint.
Yeah.
And so if somebody's there for a week and they're parking all over the street and people complain, then you would have the sheriff, because it's a, the sheriff is who would actually go give the ticket and enforce, right, acting in behalf of Morgan City. Essentially, it could be, is that how enforcement would happen? It would be the sheriff's office in behalf of Morgan issue a violation.
Or we enforce it through the business licensing by just revoking the business license or.
That-
So,
that-
yeah.
That's the idea.
So is that, council, is that something we need to tweak or?
Well, I like the way the ordinance
Where
is
we
written
have
on
it.
parking.
I do too.
Okay.
I mean, I think part of the thought process behind this ordinance too, Mayor, just to kind of maybe give a little more background is we see the potential of down the road of having more of these, and so we just wanted to get ahead of it before it was a problem, and so that's where we're trying to get to. I learned a long time ago on this city council that we, as bad as this sounds, that oftentimes we can go back and address these ordinances and we can tweak and mix them down the road, change them down the road if it becomes an issue. And so oftentimes this will be a brand new ordinance to the city. And I think that we put some, is with anything that comes to us, we put extensive time and energy into getting this thing to where it's at right now. Oftentimes people show up here and think we did this in 10 minutes. I can guarantee you this one was not done in 10 minutes. So, but anyway.
I've got a few questions for Ty. Are existing homes grandfathered? Is there any grandfathering provision for,
No. No, so what it is right now is we don't recognize any, a rental's just a rental. We don't recognize it as short-term.
As a
So what,
business.
so because we didn't have anything on the books, that doesn't change the fact that you're operating a short-term rental. The difference now is that we tell them this is how you do it to comply, and there's really no structural requirement or anything. It's just, you know, post your occupancy, post your business license.
I guess if we're made aware of something going on that's existing, we can notify the person and let them know there's now an ordinance
Right.
to comply with.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the other component of that is if you rent out your home, you no longer comply or you no longer qualify for the primary residence exemption for property tax. So between the county assessor and us, there's gonna be some back and forth.
Okay.
So the assessor might even be one that says, you know, we found out you're doing a short-term rental, you no longer, they'll let us know or we can let them know.
That's a county function and the county is concerned about that.
Mhm.
We just need to let them know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is it's gonna clean itself up over time
Yeah.
for the
okay.
existence.
Gotcha. That's another trigger perhaps.
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
lets the government know. Ty, we talked a little bit about rental limitations. Stephanie was going to go look at a couple of other communities, and we kind of narrowed down to looking at something that wasn't too restrictive, but yet still had some limits. I don't see anything in the update here. Did we just not do that? Like maybe number of units in the city or number of units per,
Oh, yeah, no,
per
we,
distance? and
right,
so forth?
I see. No, just not being a destination community, putting a a cap on it creates artificial demand. And we also felt like the administrative burden to keep track of
Okay.
how many are in which neighborhood and how many aren't. It's
I mean,
until we feel like that there's a, you know,
it would have an effect similar to a liquor license in my mind. They would become marketable
yeah.
because you have a chance to receive income.
Yeah, one of the cities we looked at had a real problem with that, because they said we're only gonna allow so many per block.
Right.
And people came and applied just as a placeholder, just in case at their house, they ended up wanting to
Mhm.
move somewhere and Airbnb it. And so it just created a huge backlog of,
Even though they weren't going to do it
And then-
immediately.
yeah, and then somebody in the city has to keep track of when somebody gives one up and when someone picks one up. And so it's kind of like banking, you know, creating some sort of a business license bank for who's available, and kind of creates artificial demand,
Right.
you know, instead. But that's just one of those things that I think we let it play out until
Yeah,
we see. But
we're not a resort
well,
community.
we're
yet.
not resort, and the housing price doesn't make it feasible for, you just don't go buy a house and turn it into a short-term rental and make your money back at
Mhm.
$100 a night. But for some people that have current mortgages or have to move, or, you know, it's an option, so.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to recommend just a wording change on the second page, on page 2, right in the middle of the page. 3.08030, letter B. Short-term rental or a transient lodging facility must have management or management's ability to deal with all issues that might arise. I suggest we say must have management or a management representative located within 30 minutes of Morgan City boundaries and be available at all times. That way we're not, it goes on to explain down below that they're available, for the issues. We're not repeating that same comment twice, and I think it just flows a little better. So short-term rental or a transient lodging facility, that's the highlighted, must have management or a management representative located within 30 minutes of Morgan City boundaries. I think that's what we're asking for, is someone within 30 minutes. Yes, yes. But the second line there in red, management ability to deal with all issues that might arise, cross that off. Yep.
Redundant after you look at the second line.
Exactly. It's redundant with the second line, so it reduces that. Thank you. Just a little discussion, Ty, maybe on, go over to page 4, letter B, prevention of noise, nuisance, trespass, or short-term rentals. The nuisance and the noise is relative. You may have a neighbor on one side that's calling in every 20 minutes and a neighbor on another one that never does. It's relevant probably to the individual. It's subjective. Do we need to tighten that down a little bit so that it's not so subjective? I mean, I remember seeing one ordinance where you measure that, and we don't want to get to this level, but they measure the decibels at the borderline between the two homes.
Yeah, or the lumens on lights, and there's.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need to police it to
Yeah.
that detail.
And again, maybe where there's not that much going on, we just go with it the way it is rather than getting too involved. All right.
Yeah, it's kind of,
I think unless there's a complaint,
well, it's
If
codified as a residential use, so all residential ordinances still apply. You know what I mean? That's
Gotcha.
like,
Yeah,
Well,
just,
it lists out quite a few things there.
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all list out.
I think the intent is to put it on the management that they're aware when they
Yep.
get a business license, that that's something that they're in charge of communicating.
I think number 2 right there covers that pretty good.
just, okay. last page, page 8, very first paragraph. Second sentence, in addition, in the event that such dwelling is on the waiting list for a whole home vacation rental as described in this chapter, we've just decided there's no
Right.
waiting list, so we need to
Good
cross
catch.
that off,
Yeah, good catch.
strike that. Page 8, the very top of the page is the second sentence, just strike that. In addition, in the event that such dwelling is on a waiting list, we're not going to do this, we've just decided.
Must have a different page 8.
My page eight's not reading that.
Okay, well, it's right, it's right above section 3, at the very end. It is penalty, suspension, or revocation of license, and then it talks about enforcement provisions.
Number 1.
A1, and then, yes, A1.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. That isn't the paragraph. It just happens to be the top of my page. Everybody should know that. So it starts out, any owner of any dwelling within the city, and then a violator of this paragraph. And then the third sentence, in addition, in the event that such dwelling is on a waiting list. Yeah, we strike that. Because number 1, it says it's described in the chapter, which it isn't, but number 2, we're not going to create a waiting list. Yes, yep. Yeah. And then one other little change on the next paragraph. And Gary, maybe this one would be best answered by you. It says any owner of any dwelling with the city who, having first obtained a business license for short-term rental, operates or permits the operation in violation of the terms and provisions of this section. Shouldn't it be chapter?
Yes.
Pardon?
Yeah.
So change the word section to the word chapter. Then we're including the whole ordinance and not just a paragraph or 2. And then the last question I have, again, maybe Gary or Ty, it says the city council may revoke a license. Do we revoke business licenses? Is that a city council function?
They do come to you. If we're revoking it, yes, you take the first step, but ultimately it comes to you. Make a
Okay.
decision as to whether or not to.
So the staff issues the license, the council revokes it.
Revoke it, 'cause they
Okay.
are revoked.
Okay.
That way, if they can come in, they can make their arguments. We've had that happen on a limited number of times, I think
Okay.
once in my whole time here. But they do come into the council and they make an argument. And you make a decision as to whether or not it should be revoked.
Okay.
Is that?
Yep, that works. Well, that's the way it's worded, so we'll leave that in. But that would be the same for all licenses, not just this one. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. We need to go to the new item B before we vote. That's the way I'm thinking.
We probably, well, now that we've done it, we can do.
You can vote on that.
Yeah, I think
We could
can-
vote on it, on B. With that being said, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance 24-09, ordinance enacting Title III, Chapter 3.08, transient lodging facilities of the Morgan City Code, providing for a repealer, providing for severability, and providing for an immediate effective date.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion on amendment ordinance 24-09 and a second. I believe this is a roll call. Jeff, Reed,
Aye.
Jeff. Aye. Eric,
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, let's move to the new item B, which is up in the A position. Review action amendment to Title I, Chapter 1-15, Consolidated Fee Schedule of the Morgan City Code, enacting a business license fee for transit lodging facilities, short-term rentals, amending electrical service charges and water rates, ordinance 24-08. Discussion. Ty? Is that why Clark's there?
So, as you recall, we changed the way we do rates. We just do the entire, we just readopt the rate schedule. So every time it's updated as of our last meeting instead of handling them individual. So this has 3 items on it. The first one is the business license fee. That's $50, a $25 inspection fee, and then a $50 fire inspection fee. So those go to the appropriate. What's,
Is that enough? I mean, considering, it's gonna involve our staff on enforcement. And just case in point, Garden City, they started out with fees of $300 and $150 on a renewal. Within just a year or two, they went up to $1,200 and $600 for a renewal because of the time that it took staff to,
yeah, and they're kind of a resort deal where they're,
understood, but nonetheless, $50 is gone in no time.
yeah. And that's common with a lot of our business licenses is, 90-something% of them, they fill it out online, it flies right through. We have a couple inspections, and then we always have a couple that just take a ton of administrative work, yeah.
Yeah.
So if they've done their homework, on the first $50, the inspection should go fairly smooth. There's not a lot of things to look for on the inspection, but 50, 50 and 50 would probably be another way to go. So 50 on the inspection,
Yeah,
just because getting there, reviewing it, getting there.
I think the other consideration is on the back end, and that's enforcement. you
Yeah.
know, I
We're,
think you're gonna have neighbors that are calling regularly just because they don't want the home there in their neighborhood.
yeah. So we're open. We just proposed kind of comment to what a business license costs.
Maybe start with that and see where it goes.
Yeah. All of our fee schedule's kind of difficult because it's supposed to be based on actual staff time and it varies. Part of it, once they do have one to renew, is online. They fill it out themselves and they don't need an inspection every single time. I think this is their first time, annual fire inspection, but it kind of leaves it up to us if we need to stay after it. So, but we can go.
Yeah, compare an alcohol license, 125, 200, 125. Is there more work involved in that than there would be in this?
Not on the alcohol one. No. We used to have to do a lot more homework. We used to have to do a lot of research on proximity to schools and facilities and stuff like that, but
Not now.
so, but I can tell you that we would put in, you can justify more than that if you, with the staff time, you can definitely justify more than that. So.
Yeah, go ahead, Jake.
I noticed that you have 50 for the motel / hotel, which there's not a lot of those in town. One hotel and maybe more, but also bed and breakfast. It seemed if you're gonna bump one, then maybe you bump the other.
Yeah, good
Just
point.
saying for comparable
Yeah.
uses. Certainly one is bigger, but the research.
Yeah, transient
all
lodging
that.
was highlighted.
I guess the other thought too is not making it just encouraging people to get a business license because it's only $50
Yeah, good point.
instead of trying to avoid it because it's,
Let us know.
yeah, just let us
I'd
know.
like to see how this thing rolls out for a while.
Yeah, what
I
if,
mean,
what if
how
we,
how many do we have and how many's gonna come and?
But the inspection costs just as much as I could see us doing 50, 50
Right,
and 50.
let's do that, but you'd want to change the motel one to the same, I think. 50, 50 and 50 also.
Yeah, and we actually pay the fire one to the county.
Here's that 50.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're just passing that along.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'd feel good with that to start out.
Good start.
We make that one change, the 25 to 50 on both motel and transient.
Yeah, so keep track of those changes so you can vote at the end. So that's just, because that's just one of the three, right? The other one is electric service charge. So if you remember, we did the power rate study. Has it been 2 years ago?
About, yeah.
About 2 years ago. And so the path that you chose at that time was to do, we didn't have a base charge at the beginning. So we've gone up by $2.50 each time. So that would add the $2.50 from $5 to $7.50. And then we don't have a proposed change in the rate. We did the formula on that annual adjustable rate, and it came back that we're just right where we need to be. I know you've gotten a lot of pushback on our power rates, but the reality is we just didn't have any fund balance to absorb the losses. And that tide's turning now, and even Rocky Mountain Power is proposing a 30% increase to the Public Service Commission. So this situation hasn't improved, I guess is what I'm saying, but after evaluating the last year, we're good with the rate. So we're only proposing to adopt that change in the base charge based on our rate study that we performed.
Those are, in my mind, small rates or small charges or small changes.
Yeah.
Will that make any impact?
Yeah, it'll get us to where we're headed. Because we were like the only ones without a base service charge, and
Remember that?
and we're working our way up to $10 instead of hitting the $10 at the same time as the rate. It is an incremental change, but because we did both that and the power rate last year, this is a lot more tolerable, but it still heads us in the right direction.
Dan, are you asleep yet? Can I get you a pillow? All right. Appreciate you sticking around.
So any more questions on power?
Let's move forward.
Okay. And then the other one is the water. We adopted the water rate study. We had a study and we had a couple proposed options, and the option that we chose with that one was to do begin with a 12%, which we did last year. This year would be 10%, and then next year would only be a 3%. So that's also included in the
And that
water rates.
looking forward seems to be working also.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, if you remember in the water rate study, that was also trying to get us on a path to do a new water tank in 2029. But there's no possible way we're gonna get there. So we are building a little bit of a fund balance. And the water department still owes the power department a couple $100,000 from previous borrowing. So it keeps the water in line.
Okay.
I think we're on a good path there.
Very good.
And any other rates in the fee schedule you want to change while we're talking about it?
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
That's it.
I'm just kidding.
I'm like, that changes a lot, Ty.
Clark, any input on power and rates?
So one of the
Grab a mic.
one of the best things we've done is to put that power cost adjustment, because it's so unpredictable anymore. You used to be able to plan on a cost, and there's so many different things that can affect it. So we're looking forward, or we're looking back. You know, we take whatever the cost was in the year behind it. You know, what our wholesale power cost was, and then we see if we're above or below, and then we try to make those adjustments. Unfortunately, I don't see a chance of us going back.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
Well, was it last year or the year before where everything spiked just
it
like
was,
5, 6, 7
yeah, it
fold?
would have been 23, 24.
Yeah,
And that happened within a month.
yeah, during the summer, wasn't
One
it?
month,
Yeah.
it put us in the red for the whole year
Yeah,
in 1 month. So, you know, and then we go back and we look at that and we
So we've
go, okay,
gotta-
we need to make those adjustments so that we can.
got to
make it
cover
back.
that.
And of course, also what we're hoping with, we need some reserves. We haven't been operating on reserves or budgeting for reserves. And, you know, the recommendations are that you have
Mhm.
adequate reserves.
I think that was part of the study, wasn't it?
Exactly, exactly. They recommend at least 6 months.
Mhm.
Because if you went into a multi-month power increase like we had in that 1 month.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd be a little more sheltered, so.
How close are we on that,
What's that?
on the reserve?
We're getting closer
It's building,
to our goals.
okay?
I think we're shooting for,
1.5 million.
yeah, we
Yeah, I
want one
remember
and a
that.
half, and we're getting closer to that.
Okay.
Well, we're on the path there.
On the path, there you go. We're not
We're like
we're not on the-
$400,000, you know what I mean?
We're all on the path to be millionaires,
Well,
right?
you have a,
On the
yeah,
path.
you have a kind month like last month that was very nice to us.
Cool.
And you can, yeah, cool, and and there was a lot of power. You know, you won't see that this month, just too hot, so. But anyway, it,
Won't see it this week.
It balances.
this
the-
week.
Yeah.
this week will change everything.
Power on this week.
Yeah.
What is sad is it's really out of your control.
Out of everybody's control.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
control.
It's,
Exactly. And even through conservation or whatever, so.
But our guys do amazing jobs
They
with the
do.
things that are in their control.
Yep.
With the amount of people we have and how good our system is,
we could,
it's come a long ways.
Yeah,
we could make make the big boys attend how you operate your department.
exactly.
They'd learn a lot.
Thank you.
Is there any more discussion on the rates?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we pass ordinance 24-08, an ordinance amending Title 1, Chapter 1.15 of the Morgan City Code by enacting business license fees for the transient lodging facilities, amending electrical service charge fee, and amending water rates of the consolidated fee schedule, providing for repealer, providing for severability, and providing for immediate effective date with the necessary changes.
Building inspection.
The
fee
building inspection fee from $25 to $50
for Motel and
for the
transient,
motel and transient facilities charge,
period.
period. Got it, Denise?
You got that, Denise? And I'll second that.
Okay. Good work there.
I'll second
Okay,
it.
we had a second from Jeffrey.
Yeah.
He beat
I'll
you.
third it.
Okay, we have a motion from Eric, a second from Jeffrey on ordinance 24-08. No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Aye.
Yeah. Eric?
Aye.
Dave? Aye. Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Okay, let's go into city reports and business. What?
Missed one.
Got C.
Oh, I missed one. C, there's a C in there.
The C.
Okay, item C, review action, amendment to utility service agreement, waive protest to annexation. Hi,
So this is one that we brought before and we did have public comment on it. It's just some language we would like to add when on the utility agreement that they recognize that if they're receiving city services. And some of the pushback was residents didn't want to give up their right to protest. So we didn't do anything with it. I went and did some homework. They don't have a right to protest anyway. So The only time you can protest annexation is if you own 1,000 acres or more in the annexation area zoned manufacturing or agriculture. Are the only people allowed to protest annexation now, so. So I don't know of anybody that applies to, but we wouldn't be providing services to, we wouldn't extend our services that far beyond our own boundaries to service someone with 1,000 acres anyway.
Then why do you, if it doesn't apply, why do we have the, I mean, it says expressly waive and abandon all rights. Why are we including
So that could, the wording could be changed. We just want to make sure that there's an awareness. So it's not very often that someone requests services outside. Anyway, I mean, we don't do that only for an existing home, right? We don't do it on new
Right.
builds. We only do it on an existing home. So just makes them aware that if you're accepting city services, then so they're already in the city. And the only time they're outside the city would be an existing home in our situation.
There's one situation in the annexation code that allows for unilateral annexation, where the city provides the services. In other words, if it was close enough that they could be annexed into the city. And we've been providing services for over a year, we can unilaterally bring them into the city. One thing that would prevent us from doing that is if over 50% of the individuals in that area objected to it, that's the end of the unilateral attempt to annex. So by putting this in, that eliminates somebody who's been using our services for over a year from objecting to a unilateral annexation, different than the one by
Request.
petition
Uh-huh.
that you're talking about. So it is a good provision to have in there.
Of course, doesn't apply for anything prior to this. Again, yeah, there might be that same right available to someone prior.
You're talking about anything previous.
Right, previous to our agreement.
Yes, yeah, anything previous to the agreement. So
And
they'll need to sign the agreement. They re-sign that every.
No, it's just when they connect to utilities.
Connect.
Huh.
So it's any new connection, I guess, is what it would be.
Yeah.
But new connection to an existing home, so the home would have to be existing outside of the city boundary.
Before we allowed it.
Yeah,
It's a very narrow.
I mean, that's, I'm sitting there
Yeah,
going,
there's not,
It is a gap, but it's a very narrow gap. So
we've tightened that up
we have, and we've,
a lot.
Well, that was our ordinance 2 years ago that
For
that
yeah, and we
anything new.
prohibited
Yeah.
connections for new construction.
But the gap is there's still potential that we service a home and then they turn around and say, no, we don't want to let our neighbors annex. So it's more on the petition side.
see, and I can.
Could Gary or Jake, could say a neighbor, the neighbor city boundaries doesn't want to annex, but yet his neighbor next to him, one lot over does. We can't annex with that island in the middle. What happens there? How, does that mean that the neighbor down the road can't do it?
Well, it comes down to, there are a number of requirements. You can't create an island or peninsula when you annex.
Right.
And then the other requirement is that it be contiguous. And if it meets all those requirements, however, you could bring a neighbor in if you had enough property and enough value in that property.
By the percentages that
The percentages.
you're
that are
talking
required.
about. Okay, I think I remember you.
50% of the appraised value and
Yeah,
30% of
The
the
equation is.
property. There's an equation to that.
okay.
Hmm,
Well, good.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the potential would be there that you would never annex anything if one lot owner could hold out and say, I'm not going to annex.
That's happened. That's why.
Yeah, why the rules?
Yeah. The annexation rules are supposed to change here soon. They're very complex. The stays asked Will, we're looking at those, but just to make them more concise and simple.
Hmm.
There's a lot of irregularities, complexity in it.
It got messed up a long time ago. You remember townships?
Yeah.
In Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County is the biggest single city in the entire state. Municipal type service district that services a whole bunch of, and there were a whole bunch of little townships in there. And they were trying to do wall-to-wall cities. And the townships came up to the legislature and they said, we don't want our township
Mhm.
to be placed into a city. And we don't, that's the reason we are a township. And so they created a whole set of rules for annexations within first-class counties.
Just Salt Lake County.
And as you read through the code, you're going, okay, does this apply to the first-class county or all the others? Or and it just became a real mess. Then subsequent to that, they turned townships into cities anyway. I mean, really, for all intents and purposes,
Mhm.
they're a different form of municipal government now. And that solved that problem. Wall-to-wall cities was no longer a concern, but you still have the mess that they created in the annexation section of the code.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, there are sections, like I know that people have been holding hearings where they didn't need to hold hearings. And there's just all kinds of, that needs to be cleaned up, and that's what Jake was talking about, is it needs to be simplified because urban development should occur in cities. Rural development should occur in rural areas. That's just the way that it was designed, because cities can provide services and counties can't. So. Except first-class counties. They provide everything, so. Sorry, that was trivia.
No, thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That helps my brain.
So we just need to,
Do you need a motion for that?
yeah, would we need to vote on anything with that? Just our heads up to know
Well, it's
what's
on the
coming down the
agenda
line.
as a review or action, so you can take action on it or not.
Well, are we okay with the motion, Gary? Yeah, I'd move then that we approve our
Okay.
utility service agreement with to include item number 15 on the agreement regarding waiving and abandoning all rights to protest under Title 10, Chapter 2 of the Utah Code.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Can I ask you a comment, Gary, before I accept the motion in a second? So I'm still struggling in my head about the waive protest to annexation. So if you have somebody that's farther in that area and is gonna wants to annex, then that automatically forces others that are closer. I mean, so if we have the city line here and we have a home that's, say, 3 homes down and he wants to annex, that automatically brings the others in. They don't have any way to protest that, or?
So he'd have to be contiguous, and there'd just have to be an island or peninsula created with the other person's property, but the person who's annexing still has to be contiguous. They still have to be on the border, so they can't be
And
way
have
out
a
here
utility.
and annex
A
everything
utility.
in between. Or they can't cherry stem out, and they'd have to be right there on the border. What this is intended to do is to eliminate, for example, this guy has a piece of property, he doesn't want to come in. This guy has a piece of property all around it, and he does want to come in. This guy can force this guy in, because quite frankly, it creates problems with roads, with utilities, with everything else. That's what it was meant to do. It was not meant to close a gap between some guy out here that wants to annex and some guy right on the border that doesn't. So
kind of like what the North Morgan Hill looks like. It'll straighten that line instead of a.
Yeah, so we have an area of town that has just the big jogs of who's in the county and who's not. And at
Yeah.
one point they offered, some people wanted to, some people didn't, and then they drew the boundaries and it does have peninsulas. It's
And most of
little
them,
narrow strips and,
yeah, and they're on city services, most of them, correct?
yeah.
I can think of another situation where this would apply.
So
You want to voice that or?
No, because I think this is the right thing to do. I mean, this is gonna,
so you have a,
I just had to get it straight in my head.
Does that help?
The word protest just has a negative.
mhm.
Yeah, and it's kind of a fiction because really the only ones that can protest an annexation are affected entities. Or as Ty indicated, if you have a certain amount of property, then you can, and I think they changed that last year to 1,200 acres. I think they changed that.
Yeah, I don't know that. No, I can.
But it's really, really big, you know, but for the most part, the only ones that can protest, other than in that unilateral situation I was telling you about,
Right.
is a governmental entity like the county, or the special district. So it's really irrelevant in most cases, except.
can we make
for-
them sign a blank one?
Yeah. They can, they probably wouldn't have much they could protest about, because we provide all the utilities, so.
Okay, well,
Hope that helps. I probably confused.
before
the
the
issue.
interruption from the mayor's head, to get it straight, we have a motion and a second. On the amendment to utility service agreement, waive protest annexation. This is an all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, that's unanimous. Thanks for catching that, Eric. I skipped over item C. City reports and business. Does the city council have anything to report on?
I don't.
Okay. Ty, will turn it to you for your updates.
Okay, if you don't mind, we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. So the city entry, we have we're redoing the entrance to the city on a grant. I think I've talked about that a couple of times and we looked at a couple renditions. The planning commission is supposed to be the advisory board for that, and I was supposed to present to them and they canceled their meeting. So I'm doing it under administrative
Duties.
updates.
Do you have a
Rendering, so Jake has done a little bit of rendering, so.
So, I'll walk through a little bit what's on here. This is the layout. So this is you see.
Your mic's off, your mic's off.
Thank you. You see the railroad tracks. So those are the existing railroad tracks. And that solid 2 lines is where the bridge for the railroad is on the lower left-hand corner of the page. And a little bit of background on this design is really ties into the Morgan Railroad theme. You know, Morgan's a rail town. That's how it was founded. And so the idea was, how do we bring that into the entrance and make it look and feel like a unique railroad kind of theme? And so there's multiple parts of that. You'll see in the concept design that Denise is going to pull up. Things are a little bit different than this design, but this gives you the idea of it. So the vertical posts are actual railroad ties. And I went and looked at the railroad store in Salt Lake City that recycles and sells rail ties. And they're fairly affordable. And the structural engineer was like, oh yeah, you can build anything with these, you know, there's no worry about wind or whatever. And they have a ton of life in them. So they're actually railroad. The design is with actual recycled railroad ties, those vertical posts. And then the railroad coming in. So as you get off the freeway, you kind of see that going in. The sign letters are 3D and are intended to be lit within. That's the design idea. So it kind of pops at night, sits up on the hill a little bit. You'll see that. And then the final design says, welcome to historic Morgan City. So you'll see on the render here, it just says welcome, but the idea is welcome to historic Morgan City. And then that's metal railing across and then planter. If you want to go to the construction drawings. So now that you see that visual, this will help you as we walk through the construction drawings.
Is this your design, Jake?
Yes,
Yeah, good.
so
Okay.
that was a lot of fun.
Yes.
You can tell I got excited about it.
You went to school for, right?
Yes. So this is the site layout. The boulder walls are up there kind of by the existing sidewalk. We looked at replacing the sidewalk / retaining slanting. It's some people think it's a sidewalk, other people think it's like this retaining side deal. Because it's in the UDOT right away, we held off a little bit. That may need to be replaced in the future, but we didn't want to hold up the sign project getting more into the UDOT right away. So the boulder walls, there's the 2 walls out by the sidewalk. Yep, out there. Denise is pointing to those. And then you see the railroad coming in. There's this really cool project in New York called the High Line Trail, which is an old elevated rail that goes into the city at 2 stories. And now it's a very popular trail, and they left the rail and with the plants growing through it. So that was a little bit behind the inspiration. And you'll see how they actually go in. They're not intended to be parallel like a true railroad track, but they kind of go in, they draw, the eye draws you into the sign. And then there's the sign. And if you'll scroll down a little bit, Denise, then you'll see, go up a little bit. So there's the view, looking down, you have the railroad ties holding the sign. Then it says, welcome to historic Morgan. The actual sign piece is built, I want to see if we can minimize the metal behind. So you just see the letters. That's the intent, is see these 3D letters that are lit within. And then there's a metal planter box around the bottom to have some flowers and bring some color there. You can scroll down. So the M is going to go away. The historic pioneer rock and the little plaque will be moved to Commercial Street. And so people actually be able to walk by and see that. It's a great little monument. I think being up close and personal it's actually a better location for it where you can't see it. And then some of the shrubs will go away. The Chinese juniper shrubs are going to go out. And so the trees at the top will stay. We can go to the next one. So this is the layout of the rock. The rock in the middle, that rock is red. The idea is to kind of match the native red rock of the area, kind of really make it pop. And then the rest will be gray, so just more of a background. And then there's the 3 retaining walls that are boulders. And the idea is that the middle is more of a nice level. And so 2 boulder walls, then a gradual slope up that's level, and then the boulder wall behind to catch the grade as you go up. And then this is the planting plan. I won't go through all the species. We could be here a while if we do, but they're very water wise. Everything will be on drip irrigation, so no mowing, no grass, weed fabric below. So there will still be maintenance, but actually should be less, and lots of color. I think it'll really pop as people drive in and see that. And you'll see something in the spring and the summer and the fall, and all the plants in front of the sign are low growing, and so nothing will obstruct the view of the sign. And then behind it, there'll be some conifers and some nice medium shrubs to just kind of give that background. And then also we're going to do a 30-foot flagpole. And Denise, if you go up, keep going up. Yeah, right there, just a little bit to the right. You see the shadow there. So that there's going to be a 30-foot flagpole, which is the same as on Commercial Street. Is that right? 40? Did we decide? I think we went to 30 here. So what's cool is you kind of bringing that nice American flag up a little bit closer to the freeway. And it's in the railroad right away, not in UDOT right away. So we shouldn't have any issues there. So you can go on. I think after that, we're just in construction notes and irrigation and it's kind of boring stuff. So any questions on that? It's out for bid. It's going to close on the 12th.
Friday, yeah, Friday, 10
Friday.
AM.
And so people will be asking, what's going on there and obviously, but it's intended to start right away and there's money for
That's
it.
awesome.
Yeah, so we're kind of up against the grant deadline.
Jake, from a elevation perspective, if there's 12, 15 inches of snow, what's visible?
The sign will be clearly visible. It sits on that, if you'll go down to the next one, it sits on, oh, sorry, let's see, up the first page, go up one, okay, right here. It sits on, there's about 1 foot planter and then up above. So I think the letters are easily gonna be 2 feet above the bottom letters.
Mhm. Rocks and the water-wise plants are probably covered at that point, but they would be with any
Yes.
scheme.
Yeah, but the sign will be visible.
Okay.
And there will be a little bit of visibility from the freeway, a fair amount. It's not gonna be huge in your face, but right when you come off, I sighted it about halfway down the hill. So next time you get off the freeway and you come down, if you want to stop and annoy a person behind you, about halfway down is where that eye level is intended. So you just see right there and just kind of pops.
Mhm.
And then from the freeway, I think you'll see a good visibility and at night it'll be great because it's just gonna pop and the, welcome to historic Morgan kind of glowing.
Is there
Is the
lighting
idea.
on the sign?
Yeah,
Yes, it's intended to be 3D letters that are lit within,
Okay.
kind of boxy, but that's what we want. And there will be some work with the actual design or the sign manufacturer. I think we'll have to work through them a little bit on that. So yeah,
Yeah, great.
The flag will be flying high at night. Really good.
or I think we're gonna, and there's power right there, so we can either light it with the solar or just run power right to it.
We just run power.
So Teresa, you've been pretty quiet. What do you think? Thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
It's
All right.
very unique, to be honest. I don't think there's anything like it around in the state, so.
So the other aspect of the project is we're also gonna dry scape the corner of Commercial and State Street. So we maintain, right now we try and mow both of those and it's pretty steep, but we're gonna rock scape that and put on State Street, put a reader sign, an electronic sign. That was an original concept of this one, but we moved it there so we can post community events on an electronic sign and kind of satisfy that need that everybody has to go hang stuff on the fence or, we litter that whole entrance with signs, but if we can just post their events, you can see it going both ways on State Street. And then if you're on Commercial Street, not in your way, but you'll be able to read it from Commercial Street as well. So we're getting bids for that at the same time. That's that.
Thank you.
Let's chip seal project, just so you're aware, July 15th to 17th. I don't have a list of the roads, but just so you're aware that that's going on, those kind of get excited sometimes. Our generator project, so that's that federal grant that we've had for several years. We just out here on our building, we had the 2 portables already delivered and this building just got plumbed in. Now they just need to install a control panel and then we need a landscape around it, but that project's finally
Good.
on its way down, so nice to have backup power. Personnel update, so Stephanie Howard quit. She stayed on a month while we did a recruitment and like to introduce our newest employee as of yesterday. Any speech that you want to make? Teresa Wardell,
CAs, or when I.
Grab a mic.
yesterday,
grab a mic.
Jackson's-
Gotta be recorded.
Dave checks you guys' stuff the same way he did our stuff at the bank. So I feel for you. I
So-
really.
Remember, you may not all know, Trace and I worked many, many years together. Yeah, so she knows how to push buttons.
Anyway,
Like
we're
you were here to
excited.
report on the fourth.
No, but I will.
It was overwhelming,
That
huh?
was amazing.
It was awesome.
Yep. So that's the next item. Might as well go straight to it. But anyway, welcome to Teresa.
Good.
We're excited to have you.
Welcome. Too bad you had to sit through all of this to get introduced. But you just will learn about it, right? Yeah, it won't be your last one.
So then 4th of July, thanks to the mayor and a couple council members that rode on the float, it worked out well. We handed out little garbage cans.
A
that
lot
were-
of people.
lot of people, good parade. At the chamber meeting, we just reviewed that this morning and I kept over and over just saying nobody died. So like,
That's a plus.
yeah, like you're obsessed with death. And I was like, seriously, my thought the whole day was if nobody dies, today is a success. Because there were so many people, traffic with
Oh, no,
cars, but
just
they're
kids on
very
that
well
road.
attended.
Yeah, kids on the
Not to
parade.
mention Big Boy and the people on the track.
So,
Oh, wow.
It was awesome.
then a big fireworks show went off. And the-
Water activities.
And it was all very well attended, very good job. So we'd like to thank the chamber for all their
Fireworks
efforts.
were awesome.
Ton of
Thank you
work.
guys for your support on it.
Way good.
And I will, just because I have to have the mic. Jeff, your float was actually mentioned in our chamber recap meeting. Because not only was it awesome, because we've never had anything quite so big, but the fact that you had people walking next to it to help keep people out was mentioned a couple of times this morning in our meeting, how thankful they were that people were there.
Yeah.
And
I think my daughter got visiting with other people and I think
You know what? They looked like they were working, so.
little kids.
No, it was awesome. So thank you for your support and of course, always the support of the city. We couldn't do it without everybody. So thank you.
Ton of fun.
So, next thing, we got an award from, we had a PHP, that's our health insurance. We just pass
you,
that
Jake.
around,
Good night.
Denise, if you want to
Thanks,
just start at
Jake.
the end. So I tried to convince Wanda to come here and show the awards, and she went to the conference and nominated us, but we got a wellness award from PHP at their
Thank you,
conference, so
Thank you, Gary.
public health
Hey,
employees. so-
Gary.
Anyway,
Jake, Miss Jake.
pretty proud of that, so it's always good to get recognized.
First place, huh? It's just one award every year. I mean, one first place every year.
Yeah, I think so. So, and one of the big things that we did is we had a suicide prevention program for all of the employees. We were here for a couple hours. And it was an awareness training. It was really, really well done. Anyway, it was very valuable and a lot of it just had to do with having conversations and recognizing the need to have conversations and stuff like that. So it wasn't, it just made you feel more comfortable, you know what I mean? Just watching out for each other. So it was good. In the American Founders and Constitutional Month, I just wanted to bring that up. I lost my flyer on it. You have one? Everybody got one in your mailboxes? Okay.
Is it the letter from the governor?
Yeah, yep. So anyway, that's just out there. Just wanted to make sure to draw your attention to it. We don't, as staff, have any recommendations or anything for a activity. We kind of like our chamber activities and kind of feel like we still have that really tight-knit community vibe. So unless you have other thoughts, just let me know, or we can make it an agenda item in the future. And then just a reminder that we have the UAMPS annual member conference. So let me know if you want to attend that. This one's in Heber. So it's not as far away. There's it is kind of when school starts though. It's always so close to school and this time.
Gary
it's-
just left, make sure he knows he's invited.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, so if
Or would he go to some, would he go to
he
that?
typically doesn't
Okay,
go.
be
but-
more on the league side.
Yeah, he's more in the league, but
Okay.
this is a good opportunity to hear what's going on in the power world and to have good presentations. You've been a couple times.
Yeah, so
So,
that's well done.
so I think Logan and
Yep.
Jackson Hole and same conference. It's an annual conference, but
Do a good job. It's well attended.
yeah. So I think that's all I have for updates. We do have a water leak by Shirts to a T that we've been chasing for about 4 days now. They got water in their
I got
basement. and-
texts all night. Why is the fire hydrants going off on my street? All the neighbors texting, "Well, what's going on?" Like, well, the fire hydrants, they must be releasing pressure somewhere.
Yeah, and once we find the leak, we're not exactly sure what valves are gonna need to be shut down. So people are gonna be shut off for a little while, once we find the leak, but they've already traveled past their property line. It's just having a heck of a time finding it.
Is it as deep as where they're digging now?
The line's like 12 feet deep.
Far
Yeah.
as it all?
Smokes. Wow.
Yeah, they're just still trying to find where it's subbing up from because they dug right by the driveway and went down and didn't get any water.
Yeah.
They're like, nothing's even showing up, and then they found water, so they're have an active leak now, so they're excited about that. But they can't just. So they're going up and down, just trying to find, but the pipe itself is 12 or 13 feet deep.
I thought they was gonna have to go get a digger from Jeff, that had a longer extension on that.
Yeah, you could take all the utilities out at the same time. They're having to do a lot of hand locating with the irrigation and
Where is this?
natural gas
It's right in front of Shirts to a T.
Right in front of.
on State Street. Yeah.
State Street.
Oh, so we're going under the river.
Yep,
Probably for that bridge.
yep. Yep, the water line goes under the river, so it's pretty deep.
It is. Real deep.
So, anyway, just when we drive by and see the trucks there, that's spending quite a bit of time on them. But I think that's all the updates I have, Mayor.
Okay.
Hey, my wife asked me, is there a summer luncheon?
Oh, yeah,
July 15th.
the one out in the parking lot?
Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, there will be. Oh, city one.
The city.
Yeah, we don't have one scheduled yet.
Oh,
Usually we
okay.
do it in around August, don't we? August, September.
But you're aware of the 15th? Out here in the parking.
That's what I
lot
thought he was talking about.
by the Grace Church. Cooking us lunch,
No.
county and the city.
Everybody that's around.
I thought we was gonna send out invitations to everybody. Maybe it's.
So the,
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any more comments? If not, this meeting's adjourned.
Hey, use the gavel.
I did it.
Notice that?